Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. First up for D today, we have the I Can Fix It mug with the backwards ruler, because it feels appropriate for what we are talking about today. Nice and thematic. Inside of it, we have some of the throat comfort tea from Yogi, because the richness feels like it'll be a good thing to sort of like get me through the morning here. It's been colder in the morning, like way down in the mornings before it gets to be a normal temperature in the evenings. So that is it for that. First off, apologies. I did not obviously shoot yesterday. I had an insane day the day before. I got up before the sun, and I did not stop doing something until way after it had gone down. So I missed yesterday. Apologies. I will be back at it, I promise. But that's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about instead today, homebrew rules. Some of the best homebrew rules out there, so that you can go ahead and you can add in to your game what some of those popular ones out there are. And maybe if they're not the most popular, some of what my favorites are. Again, the reason that the I Can Fix It mug is there. Now, let's go ahead and let's start it off here. Just generally speaking, I obviously am a massive fan of homebrew. I think that it is wildly important in the game. I think that without it, it's actually a very like ultimately repetitive and boring thing. The ability to homebrew things, the ability to be flexible and change things on the fly as you go is what makes a really great Dungeons and Dragons campaign, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I have played full RAW campaigns and they have been fantastic, but the fact that I like to run with the flexibility of homebrew is the reason that I really love it. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to get into some of these things. We are going to address the first one offhand. The one that sort of like encompasses almost all homebrew rules, really. It's the rule of cool. The rule of cool, it is the best homebrew rule. If it's cool and it doesn't have like a huge impact, or it's a one-timer kind of thing, let him do it. Why not? Let him do it. My biggest thing when I am playing or running all the time is kind of a why not sort of mentality. I have a deal with my current DM where my character, who doesn't understand anything about magic, has the ability, he's a sorcerer, I've talked about him many times on here, he has the ability to cast a spell that he has never cast before, assuming he has put it on his spell list. Like, I, as a meta player, put it on the spell list, but he can only cast new spells in a heated moment, in a moment of like high tension, in an emotional kind of moment, and in doing so, he does not require the material components for that first casting of the spell as part of that. So, good example, because he's a Divine Soul Sorcerer, the first time he cast Revivify, wildly stressful moment, didn't need the diamond for it. Has not had to cast it since then, thankfully, because he still doesn't know that he needs a diamond for it. He has to talk to a magic man about that, but we will get to that eventually. So, rule of cool, if there's no like mechanical reason why it shouldn't work that is going to be a lasting impact on the game, let him do it. Like, it's more important for people to have fun at the end of the day than it is for every single rule in the book to be followed, especially because the intro to the books say, hey, these are suggestions, do what you want. So, rule of cool, that's kind of the overarching one. I just wanted to throw it at the top of the list because, I mean, what else are you going to do? It is the one that sort of runs everything sometimes in these games. But getting into the actual ones that I have listed out here as like real points on my list. First off, we have a feat at first level. You're playing adventurers. You should be able to do awesome things. And yeah, don't get me wrong. The adventurer at all has more stuff going on for them than anyone else does to begin with. And so the ability to have a feat, like a specialization at that first level, I think is a really good way to just sort of drive home further that you are a little bit more than your average person. Now, you might be saying, well, what does that do to variant human, people who get feats at first level? Guess what? They get one too. Like, they just get two instead of one. So it's not like you are taking that away from them. They just get an additional one. Everybody across the board gets one. If you already have one, great. Congratulations, you get a second one. having a feat at a first level really sort of helps you better define your character, and it also then can give you that little extra bump to your stats if you need it in one of your scores if you take a half feat. It's a really, really great way to sort of like flesh out the idea that you have in your head earlier on in the game, particularly if you're going to be starting at like level 3 or something like that. If you start at level 3, you kind of have to have like a hard idea of what your character is at the start of the game because you are going straight into a subclass at that point. And so having a feat to help you really round that out mechanically is a really, really helpful thing. I am really a fan of the concept, at least, of them putting that in the 1D&D playtest, which, if you guys didn't see, there is no new playtest material yet. However, they have extended the expert class survey by another 2 weeks. So if you haven't done it yet, go do it. Help shape the future of D&D. But I am a fan of, conceptually at least, them putting feats in for every single race at the beginning, or every single background, I guess, is where it would be tied to, just because it makes sense. Like, if you are an adventuring type, you are special in some way, and having a feat really helps drive that home a little bit more. So, feats at first level, top of my list there, or I guess it's the first one on my list. I don't know if it's really top of the list. This next one is one that I have not gotten to do, but I really, really do like, conceptually. I've not done it to my players yet. I might try it at some point here, but my players are high-stress people a lot of the time, so I don't know that this would go over super well with them. But hidden death saves is a really, really interesting one to me. If you don't know what a hidden death save is, first off, it takes the onus off of the player to make their own death saving throws. So if they are stressed, if they are like in absolute panic, the DM is taking that on as part of continuing to run the game. It helps them disconnect a little bit from what is going on if you do it in one of the two ways that I'm about to tell you about. So the first way that hidden death saves can work is if the DM is rolling the death save for the players. I really should have led with this. Sorry about that. If the DM is rolling all of the death saves for the players so that the other people around the table, including that player, don't know the status of what is going on. You would just be going through the order and you would go, okay, you are up next. Okay, and up next is, and you would just keep rolling through that way. That is one way to do it. Again, it takes the stress off of the player for rolling their own death saves, but it adds the stress of they have no idea if their character is alive or not right now. So that's kind of a problem. The other way is if you have the player roll it, but they keep the result hidden from the other players at the table. So they go ahead and they roll, and they know what is going on. And the DM can interact with them at any point to check in, see what is going on. But usually the way it works is that everybody is kept in the dark until somebody actually goes up to and inspects that character, because even the monsters wouldn't super know offhand if the character is alive or dead. So having a hidden death save is something that will raise the stakes as soon as somebody hits the ground, because you suddenly do not know how close or far away from death they are. Again, I think it's a really cool concept. I would like to use it at some point, but I also do like to give the players the opportunity to strategize around knowing how many death saves people are at, if they are at death saves in the game, because it helps sort of like create an order of operations. It makes them feel like they are in control a little bit, but I also do conceptually like the idea of sort of like taking that control away just a little bit, so that there is this air of panic a little bit more that heightens the stakes of what is going on. Obviously, do not implement this if it is something that is going to be harmful to your players, I'm going to say, because they are so high stress. That's not how they want their character to be, something like that. So hidden death saves, I would love to try it. I think it's a really cool concept. Again, I have not tried it yet, but I would like to. I just don't have a group right now that would be into it. And actually, keeping in the death saves category, moving down to the next one on the list here, are resurrection rituals. A lot of new people coming into the game know about resurrection rituals because they have come into it via Critical Role or are tangentially knowledgeable about Critical Role in one way or another. And it does solve the problem that has persisted in D&D, which is that death at a certain point is more of an inconvenience than an actual drawback. Whereas Matt Mercer came along and showed us all his resurrection ritual setup, and it is really, really potent and really fantastic. I love it. I think that it is a really, really good way to enforce roleplay at your, or reinforce, there we go, roleplay at your table. If you are not a roleplay heavy table, this is not going to be something for you necessarily, but if you are somebody that is running a table that has a lot of roleplay centered things, it is going to be a super, super useful thing. So essentially the way that it works is when somebody dies, particularly if somebody dies and they do not get brought back by Revivify right away, when I run it, I make Revivify a ability check using your spellcasting modifier, so a d20 plus whatever your spellcasting mod is. If you are not brought back by that immediately, then you cannot be brought back by that, and instead you have to be brought back in a longer full ritual for one of the higher level spells. In doing that, there are 3 parts to the ritual. Each of the pieces of the ritual is a skill check. People can contribute what they want to the ritual in order to gain the ability to make one of those skill checks at the DM's discretion as to what the skill check actually is. If you were trying to double up on things, it is going to raise the DC, but it doesn't make it impossible. And the resulting checks bring the DC for Resurrection up or down, which is ultimately denoted by a final die roll of from the DM behind the screen. That roll, DC starts at 10. Every success on whatever the DCs, or on the 3 ability checks, brings it down by 3. So if you succeed once, it comes down to 7. Or yeah, succeed twice, comes down to 4, math. And if you succeed 3 times, it comes all the way down to 1. And then each failure bumps it up by 1. So if you fail and succeed twice, you are down at a 5 instead. And then, on top of all that, your DC, while it starts at 10, it goes up by 1 every single time you die to indicate the soul's fraying connection with the mortal plane. So it gets progressively more difficult even if you are succeeding on all of these checks. It is a really, really fun and interesting way to draw out some of the deep emotional roleplay from your players. If you are a fan of Critical Role and you have watched some of their games, you have seen this ritual in action, and it is heartbreaking to watch sometimes, but it really draws out some of the most emotional moments, and it's a really, really, really good way to go ahead and make it mean something when somebody dies. I treat, again, Revivify as the paddle, so you're not even far enough gone for this to be a problem, but once you get into those longer rituals, it is so good. So good. So, Resurrection Rituals. Add them to your game, because honestly, they're so cool. Next up, another one I picked up actually from Matt on Critical Role. No ones on hit points. When you are leveling up and you are rolling for hit points, I really like rolling for hit points as opposed to taking the static number. There are plenty of people that do. You can roll, and if you get less than the average, you take the average. I think that's a great rule too. I think that having the players be beefier is always helpful for a DM, but if they are not quite as beefy, it does help the strategic part of the game a little bit, because suddenly you can't have just everybody like wandering onto the front line. But not being able to roll 1s on those hit points. If you go ahead and you go to level up and you roll a 1 on your hit die, re-roll it, because it sucks to only gain 1 hit point. It's just not as fun. I would rather you go ahead and have more hit points, because as I said, you're gonna be a little bit heavier if you have more hit points, and you're gonna be able to take a couple more hits from the things that I throw at you. And quite frankly, I want you to be able to stand there and just get beaten down by this thing that I'm chucking at you, because it's more fun that way if you are able to actually withstand the tide. But again, I am somebody who does believe in rolling low, but not rolling a 1 on it. So keeping in the sort of like have, an amount of hit points, but not necessarily getting minimum of half every single time. So no 1s on hit points. I think it's not good. I think that it's really important to let your players feel like you're not going to stick them with the worst they can get sometimes. Now, before we get to the last one I have on my list here, I want to just like touch on a couple more of them that people are going to be surprised that I probably didn't bring up. First and foremost, the critical hit rules, the damage for critical hits. I stick by what the book says. I like to either roll double the dice or double the dice rolled. And not so much the full damage plus a roll of the dice, or there are several other ones that I am blanking on right now, but that is the one that we use in the game that I play in, and it is really, really cool to have like that just like hammer home hit. I just don't use it in my games. Similar to what I'm talking about with the hit points, I don't want to just down a player right away, so doing full damage plus some is ludicrous in my opinion, and so not really my thing. But critical hits, definitely one that people are going to be jumping on me for. The health potion action economy, I full support of health potions as a bonus action. I use it at all my tables. I think it's a better way to run health potions than having to, you know, try and build your action economy around drinking a potion. I do like the bonus action to have to roll, full action to just get max healing from it, or the bonus action to take it, action to feed it to somebody. All of that, I think it's important. And then probably the biggest one I touched on a little bit. I'm a huge homebrew fan in general. So homebrew classes, subclasses, feats, races, anything, bring it to me. I love it. I want to use it. I will check it to make sure that I think it is balanced, and we will go forward with the understanding that like it is subject to change if I think that it gets out of hand, but for the most part, it's going to be fine. I balance games around my players. I don't make them balance around the game. So I love adding homebrew stuff in there. Which brings me really to the final one on my list here. I'm sure there's so many more that I have forgotten. Let me know what they are, because again, I want to know. I love adding homebrew rules. But the final one here, again, Matthew Mercer, thank you for this one. The how do you want to do this? The epic moment at the end of a fight, or in the middle of a fight when you kill an enemy, where you ask your player to describe to you how they dispatch their enemy. This is such a good rule for flavor, for roleplay. It is so fantastic. If you don't do this at your table, I highly recommend trying it just once. If nothing else, it feels good to say even. And you can change it to make it your own. You don't have to be the how do you want to do this, because that is so heavily associated with Critical Role. It's part of what their brand is built on. In fact, I try not to use it sometimes because I want it to be a unique sort of experience. And so I have started asking my players to paint me a picture or paint us a picture. I'm workshopping a couple of different phrases to see which one is best for me. Giving them that moment of the spotlight, giving them that ability to like take the reins, describe to you the usually absurd and almost anime way that they like destroy this thing, and then taking it, gussying it up a little bit and just rolling through it. It's so good. It is probably the best thing to come out of my love of Critical Role. It's probably one of the things that I think they have given the community the most in terms of homebrew rules. I adore resurrection rituals. I really, really love the bonus action health potions. That's probably not where it started, but they use it. The no ones on hit points. But the how do you want to do this is so, so good. Try it in your game if you haven't already. I promise you, you're going to love it. Your players are going to love it. And if you are playing an improv roleplay heavy game, it is going to be something that really makes those fights feel good, especially because they can work it into the roleplay then. So that is the end of what I have to talk to you guys about on that. That is several, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever you want to call it, homebrew rules for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that you should add at your table. Let's go ahead and get into the shows that we have today and this weekend. We have, in no particular order, Mayhem D&D, Off the Rails, Oxventure, Just Roll With It, Strings of Fate, Rolling with Difficulty, World of Low, The Crown DM, and Coming Together Naturally. That is today. Tomorrow, we have Dice Funk and Strange Hungers, and Sunday, we have, I'm sorry, my nose is so itchy. Sunday, we have Super Idols, Roll For Your Life, Grinning Griffin, Dungeon Drunks, Library of Nightmares, The Chaos Brigade, Rise of the Forsaken, Chromatic Dice, Stradcast, High Rollers, and Tabletop Notch. Go ahead and check them out. Let them know that I sent you, because again, someday somebody's going to say something to me about it, and I'm going to think that it's funny. But until then, I'm going to keep asking you guys to do it. Yeah, that is everything. So, Thank you so very much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it, and thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check out the link in the episode description. But until next time, don't forget, everybody, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.